If you're systemizing bad systems and you're making a process out of bad processes, you get a bad output.
What's the thing that'll kill you? It's like businesses don't die of starvation, they die of indigestion.
If your processes are manager created, they're probably looked at once a year, and you are losing to your competition because they're updating it on a daily basis and making things better. Metrics is a lot of client firefighting, but like the structure is a lot of team fighting.
What I see most business owners get wrong, which is where I think this is the antidote, is they build the teams around them.
Agencies tend to use cheaper talent as a pod lead. The people who are in those positions don't usually have subject matter expertise. Because of that, they also don't usually have like true authority for the people who they're trying to manage. So instead, what I recommend is called
Poor processes cost service businesses an average of 20 to 30% of their annual revenue. Plus, if you have strong operational efficiency, you're actually 3 times more likely to scale beyond that $1 million in revenue. Today, Kyle, welcome to Masters of Lead Generation podcast. I'm very excited to have you on here and to hear you talk about the neglected, ugly stepson of most businesses, operations.
Thanks, ALISHA. I'm happy to be here to talk about the ugly stepson of operations.
Don't worry. When it's marketing, I'm I've got like the sad middle child in funnels and landing pages, like the ignored Malcolm in the middle. No one cares. So we'll talk some facts about you and why you're the master of operations for today's episode. So you're an entrepreneur, business investor, and you have over 12 years of experience in starting, scaling, buying, and selling agencies. You've had a 7-figure exit in your agency in 2016, which was in lead gen, minority acquisition of WKND Digital, then you became the COO and now advisor. You've helped 26 agencies fix their operations since 2024. Your wife says you're the best. And in your spare time amongst all of this, you're one of our very trusted consultants at Persuasion Experience who stops us from doing dumb shit in our agency. Did I get everything?
Yeah, and those last two are the most important, that my wife says that I'm the best and that you guys are the best clients. Those are the most important ones.
Okay, end of podcast. That's it. That's all I want to get out of you. Soundbite. And I think operations can be a very unsexy word, right? But systems saves lives. And the reason why I wanted to bring you on is because we have all these people on the podcast talking about all this cool shit on how you get leads. But once you get the leads and you hire the team to manage the business and to do all the work, without the right operational infrastructure, your business will fail, right? And I'm sure you've seen this time and time again. Mm-hmm. I think something that people get confused, or where we should start, is to define things, right? So how would you define operations versus processes versus systems? And how can we think about it in our business ecosystem?
Yeah. So how do we think about operations versus processes and systems? And I think if we start with operations, there's usually 2 ways that people think of operations. And there's operations with like a big O, and that's ops, like a function. So that's finance, legal, HR, and then the infrastructure that supports the team. That's how it's traditionally used. And then it's what operations actually is, which is operations with a little o. And that's the daily task that the team does. So you creating content for your business, you running ads, you doing social media, SEO, whatever it is, that hands-on work is really the operations of the business. And then we have processes, and processes are how you organize those tasks together. So this would be like your content calendar system, your client onboarding, your content calendar process, your client onboarding process, your reporting process. And these usually have a really well-defined beginning and an end to the process, and they really make sure that work flows smoothly and consistently throughout the org. And then the last piece of that is systems, and systems kind of tie everything together. They're like the glue that holds everything together. Mm-hmm. And that would be like your project management system and your tech system and your team system and how information flows between clients and your delivery team. And the purpose of these is really to help everybody stay aligned and stay efficient.
And so let's start with the end in mind, and then we'll start to talk about the dumb shit people do in operations and how they know they even have a problem, right? But when we're even thinking like, okay, what is success? Because I think a lot of people don't understand what operations are, especially if they don't come from like an ops background, right? If they come from a sales or marketing or tech background, they don't necessarily have this like ops programming in their brain. So
nobody does.
No, nobody does. So, and even like I thought I was good at systems, and then I started working with you, and I was like, oh no, I'm just good at marketing and sales systems, like not actually ops, and then like all of the other systems that I actually need to put into the business, right?
Mhm.
So, what should be our goal for operations in our company? Like, what does the picture of success actually look like?
Yeah, really awesome questions. So what's the goal or the purpose of ops in a company? And I like to really start at a foundational level and say that it's number one, understanding what your clients value, and then number two, supporting whatever is necessary to deliver that value. So for
Mm,
instance, if we have a B2B lead gen company like Persuasion Experience, which is amazing, highly recommend you guys use this if you're not.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
your clients, like they might value getting the amount of leads that they were promised in the sales process. They might value leads that are really high quality that they don't have to return. They might value branding of the form that the leads were promised on because that's important to them because they're large. And they might value like a fast response time from your company. So
Mm.
operations job is to understand that and then do whatever it can from a process and people perspective to support that goal.
Mm. That was something that I actually found surprising working with you when you were helping us get like a lot of our ops together. And that was the focus on the values, the focus on the mission, the focus on the customer value, the focus on
The boring
the
stuff, yeah.
well, no, that stuff like that actually is really important to Matt and I. Like when we first started, that was one of the first things we did was our four values, our mission, our vision, and obviously we refined it a bit because like there was a bit of an evolution to have since we did
Mhm.
it 3 years ago to now. But because my blood type is direct response, that is how I think. It's like, well, what does the customer want? How do they talk?
Yeah.
What do they need? Like, what are you actually doing here? Because it's all about the who. And I think in business in general, from a marketing perspective, people don't even fucking get that right. Like they're not even thinking about their target market. So it must be very hard from an operational sense when you're working with people to get them to be that customer or client centric, because I struggle in marketing and I think it's an absolute duh. Like obviously, like otherwise who's going to buy your stuff?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I knew you guys were the real OGs when I asked for your like an ICP sheet, and you sent me a sheet that had like 27 pages on it of extremely well-defined ICPs. And most people don't really think about that. And it's really a disservice because if you're trying to serve everybody, then you're really serving nobody.
Mm, mm. And that's the thing, right? Like the whole point of your business is to serve a market, and it makes sense that if your operations is going to be the engine of your fulfillment or of your operations, how you do things, it has to have those people in mind, and obviously also your team. So if we were going to sort of summarize it like in a sentence, what is the goal for operations in our company? Like what is that one sentence picture of success? Would you say that it's understand what your customers want and then lead all of your operational decisions from that and like really distill down to what they want?
Yeah. So let me preface my one sentence with something that like ops job is to support delivery and to
Mm,
ensure that customers are delivered what they want. So like if you were to put it in one sentence, it's understand what clients value and then ensure the delivery of that thing.
mm. And would most businesses then at a high level have ops, sales, marketing? Is that kind of the buckets we can look at? Or would you say that ops is all of it? How can people think about it in terms of that ecosystem?
Yeah. In traditional businesses, ops is almost a separate function. But in
Mm,
how I like to run businesses, it's really integrated into all areas of the business because we look at the business like a value stream, and it's collaborative between different areas of the business versus functional businesses that our traditional management might say work well.
okay, let's unpack that a little bit and then we'll start to get into the other problems people have. So, talk to me about what is like the traditional way that people do businesses and why it's outdated and how they should actually be looking at how to install their operations.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of really successful people that will disagree with what I'm about to say. But if you look at like, let's use an example of someone who's really well known in this space, like Alex Hormozy. What he
Mm,
suggests is that you go take a look at you go take a look at sales, and then you KPI sales, and then you go take a look at marketing, and you KPI marketing, and you break the business into all these little different functions,
mm,
and you KPI and you goal them, and you have responsibilities based on that. the challenge with that is that all of the business areas collaborate with each other and impact each other. And when you make a change in one area, it impacts the other area. So you have
Mm,
to view business, the entire business, as one thing that's almost living and breathing, um, where you want to change the whole system, not just individual elements of the system. You want to make the whole system better and the whole process better, not just individual parts of that.
yeah, and you can see it like because you've worked with a lot of businesses. I've worked with maybe about 1,000, more from a marketing point of view, but I can definitely see it. The bigger they start to get, the less they're that one cohesive organism, and then things like you can
Yeah,
see as an outsider very blatantly the communication issues, right? Like even we've worked with a few billion-dollar brands, and now I don't really like to work in
they're the
enterprise.
worst.
Yeah, they're the worst. Love you all, and we can help you. But like mid market's where it's at. Like for us, not local, it's like mid market. But like I was trying to get a page of like landing page copy approved, and so there's me. They buzz me in for a conference call. There's about 7 to 8 people in the room, and I'm like, guys, where are we at? Have you approved the landing page copy? And it's like, well, Amanda needs to talk to Tom, but Tom needs to talk to Mark, and Mark's out sick, and before he can talk to Mark, he's got to talk to Paula, but Paula's on mat leave. So and I was like, and this, I'm not even joking, like that is
Yeah.
literally what happened. And it's like they can't get anything done. And I think that's like a microcosm of this like disconnectedness. And I think what you're very good at, and what I want to talk more about in a second as we get more actionable, is like thinking of them as an organism and not having distinct departments where everyone gets their hands on stuff, because that starts to really slow down the operation and stops you from being agile as you scale.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point to this too, is like once you get that large and you create these separate functions that are silos, it creates
Mm,
barriers to communication, and that slows down speed. And like speed is the number one competitive advantage of your company, and and it should be like if you can do things fast and deliver leads fast and build landing pages fast and do all of those things, it's the biggest competitive advantage you can have.
yeah. And that's like even, which we'll start talking about in a second, but when you were helping us to craft our breakthrough objectives, that's one of the things that we put in there, right? Was like that time to value. How can we
Mhm.
move faster? And then we just overhauled our whole like perfect system where we were had all these different contractors and people touching this thing and like stripped it all out. And now you'll be happy to hear we are hitting time to value of 3 weeks. Like it's like
That's
we're
awesome.
doing it. Some of it's like pure brute force a little bit because we have to like make the system work. But Matt and I
Mhm.
yesterday were like, yeah, we're here finally. Like we made this time to
Yeah,
value work,
that's like
and
a
clients,
50% reduction in like 5 months.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Sometimes they were blowing out to like 3 months, like these freaking projects before getting ads live. And it makes a huge impact on our cash flow, right? Because then we get the ads running and we get
Huge.
the retainer starting. All right, let's talk problems. I want people to be able to identify if they have an ops problem. Because basically the problem is just the gap between where we are now and the outcome we want. So we
Mhm.
know the outcome we want. And I think in a second we can probably paint a better picture of what happens when your ops is good. But what do you think, or what do you see are the problems most businesses have with their ops, and how does it show up in their business? Like a bit of a list so someone can start going, like self diagnosing if they have an ops issue.
Yeah, I'll give you like the two or three main ones that we see in agencies that I
Mm,
work with that are also super relevant to pretty much everybody that I talk to. I audit any businesses anywhere from on the small end, $10,000 a month, all the way up to $500,000
mm,
a month agencies. And the first thing that most companies don't have is like a real tracking system that tracks the right metrics. Most tracking is like no tracking, and if they do track metrics, they're not tracking the right ones. And what I mean by that is most companies tend to focus on lagging metrics that have already
mm,
happened. And
mm,
those would be the traditional financial metrics like revenue or profit or churn. And I'm not saying you
mm,
shouldn't track those things. But what I am saying is that the profit that you're looking at on that spreadsheet has already happened. So you can't impact it. Now, you can take a look and try to diagnose an issue and then fix something in the future, but you can't fix what's happened in the past.
mm,
So what you want to do instead of tracking those lagging metrics is you want to track leading metrics or leading indicators that lead you to the result that you want.
mm,
So the way that I think about this is like if your clients at Persuasion Experience want 100% on time delivery, of your projects, like that's going to be a KPI that we're looking at on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and on a monthly basis. If they want things that are beyond brand, that's now a KPI metric that I'm going to be looking at on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and a monthly basis. And we're going to go through all those things that earlier we talked about the client's value, and we're going to turn those into KPIs so that we're tracking them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So there's an alignment between all the teams on what's important because these are the metrics that we track. So I think
And
that's the first one is metrics. What questions
And
do you
on
have?
that, I love how you like, yeah, it's back to that client value because I don't think I've ever really heard anyone talk about setting up your KPIs or your tracking, but thinking about it in such a way where it's not self-centered on the business or what do I want as the CEO, like what do I, and or like plucking them out of thin air, right? Like,
Yeah.
so now it makes it very clear for me because I'm like, okay, well, this is what I'm trying to deliver to my clients. This is what I need to track. One of the epiphanies or like a good reframe I had when we were at Agency Founders in Nashville on lagging versus leading for agencies was churn. And it's like the churn metric is they're dead. I think Eddie was saying it, like they're dead. You can't revive a corpse. But
Yeah.
what are the leading indicators of sickness? Because you can make someone better, right? So
Yeah.
it's like if you know all of those, you can cure the sickness. Prevention is better than cure, but you can't bring someone back from the dead. So once a lagging indicator is tracked, it's too late. Like
Yeah.
it's already too late.
Yeah. And like the traditional metric that people will look at besides churn is also like NPS, like Net Promoter Score. But that's the same thing. Like if somebody rates low, you've already done the damage to rate them low. So we want to look at those leading indicators by like and like literally when I say this, I mean go talk to your 5 or 10 best clients, ask them what they value from a delivery and experience perspective, find the commonalities, and then make those the KPIs for your team. The ones that I'm suggesting are just what I've seen from clients that I've worked with that I give to people, but it should be different and unique for every agency because their clients are different and unique.
And just to give some people some ideas, so like our leading indicators would be time to value, the error rate, those sorts of things, right? Like the error rate,
Mm-hmm.
the rework rate, those are our leading, and then our lagging are more like our NPS, our churn, the ones that we're more tracking on the monthly, not the weekly.
Correct. Yeah. You
Cool.
can track the lagging indicators monthly, and usually there's not even really enough data to track them weekly. But if we're tracking the leading indicators daily and then we're tracking the leading indicators weekly, the monthly outcome shouldn't be a surprise because we already know that we're doing the things that clients really want us to do, that they told us that they would do to stick around. So churn should follow and be lower or stay where it's at because we're doing the things clients told us that they want.
Okay, that was number one. What's next? What's the
Yeah.
other problem, and how does it show up? And how I
Yeah.
guess like we're kind of solving it as well. You guys are welcome. Bonus content.
So we kind of touched on it earlier, and it's in larger companies or even some smaller ones too, a lot of it tends to be they're incorrectly structured. And this makes it difficult on the team for no reason. And I really advocate for a pod model with service lines. And I know these are probably new terms, so let me just define them. A pod is a cross-functional group of it's a cross-functional team, and they all have the same goals. And this could be people who are in the same service or who are in different services that are in the same pod, but the goal is that they're servicing all of the same group of clients. So you might have this 5 group of clients, and then you're going to have these specific people who are only serving these clients. And that's so they can get really deep into these clients. Because if they're trying to service everybody, like they're never going to be able to really have client specific knowledge. And there's a whole host of other reasons that I don't have time to get into. And the second part of that is a service line. And a service line is what you sell. So this could be like in the agency space, paid media is a really common thing to sell. It could be email, it could be creative. Each of those are services that typically should have their own leadership. And that's really to have somebody who's responsible for each of those service lines and the continuous improvement of them. So someone who's like really like a director of performance, like you're looking to hire, which if you're a director of performance, you should apply
You
because we should be
should.
awesome to work with. Um, but in agencies that have pods, most pods don't have most agencies don't have pods. They'll have like these shared service models where you're trying to
Yeah.
service 50 different clients. But even in agencies that have pods, they're not structured correctly. And the reason they're not structured correctly is because they don't have the right team leaders. And what I'm about to say is going to offend a lot of people. At least it did on LinkedIn recently and went viral. But
Great.
like agencies tend to use cheaper talent as a pod lead. So they'll use an account manager, or they'll use a project manager, or they'll use a client success manager. And the issue is, in the agency space at least, that the people who are in those positions don't usually have subject matter expertise. And because of that, they also don't usually have like true authority for the people who they're trying to manage. So instead, what I recommend is called a pod lead. And I know it's like a random term, but it's someone that leads the pod. It's number one, a skilled expert, and number two, that manages the pod. So this would be like an email manager if you run an email agency, or this would be like a performance manager, someone that understands ads if you run ads. Um, Whatever they are, they're an expert in the craft that you sell, and they also can manage people. And they're really responsible for the end-to-end process that's in that pod. They're responsible for the delivery, making sure things are delivered on time and at the quality that you want, and then any other KPIs that you have for the pod. And then the big bonus of having this person in this position is if somebody in the pod is out, like they can cover for them, because a CSM or a PM, like they can't do that because they're not skilled enough. They don't understand the actual work product. So it's an additional level between you and client work. And you want to be building these layers of duplicity between you and client work so you don't have to do stuff for clients. Not that it's bad, but your time is better focused on higher leverage activities.
Yes. And just to like, because I've done this and I like, it just made sense because I've been working in agencies for 10 years. 3 of that is running this one. And they, in agencies, and I'm sure other service-based businesses can sort of relate to this, but agencies, it's like there's an SEO team, an AdWords team, a Facebook team, an account management team, a dev team, and then there's no accountability, no ownership. Sometimes there's like 10 people touching the account. And so I had learnt about pods from being in Eddie's mastermind and from you. So as we scaled, this was always like, yes, but you actually taught me how to do it properly. And just like, what is this to me? This solution is having small agile teams that have extreme ownership and accountability. Like that's how I would say it in my marketer salesperson brain. It's like, I have these like killer savage teams and they have maybe 8 to 12 clients max. You helped me to figure out pod profitability. So I knew exactly what I could hire for and still have the pods at a certain ratio of profit, which then would like allow me to still hire ops and all of these other things, right? But like what you're saying, this is what most agencies do. They put somebody cheap like a CSM at the top who doesn't really understand it. And what we've done in our pods is we've hired this, most of them have come from running their own business or agency. So like they have a business owner mindset and they're in a new stage of life. They want to come and work somewhere and for various reasons. So they've usually done $10 million of ad spend, in their time. They're like these killer savages. They have a strategic mindset. And what we used to do, or how that used to show as a problem, was we used to hire for potential. We used to be tight asses because we didn't know what we could afford to hire, right? We were tight asses and we were trying to train these people. But just so for everyone listening, how that was showing up in our business was we were stuck in the client work because we didn't have anybody that we could trust who was actually at our level and could replace us in that, right? And that's what you're looking for here is people who can replace you in the client work. And what I see most business owners get wrong, which is where I think this is the antidote, is they build the teams around them instead of like looking to replace themselves at each level. And so for us, like this is how we replace ourselves at the fulfillment level. And I've done 3 client interviews for this podcast, like from case studies, and off camera, I'm like, oh, how have you gone with the team? Blah, blah, blah. They were like, look, I was really worried when you guys started to scale. I was really worried that your service would drop, but it's actually been better. Like because Matt and I were probably dropping the fucking ball, right? Like we were and I was like, no worries, that's good. They were like, no, it's awesome. I'm like, yeah, like, my pod leader, like Garvey or Vinny or whoever, it's like, they're never going to have more clients than they have right now. Like you're always going to get this level of service. It's never going to stray. And if it does, let me know. Anyway, so I just wanted to add that. That's how that problem probably shows up, right? With those agile teams.
Yeah, 100%. I don't even have anything to add. You said it all really well.
Okay, so basically then when we start to think about what are like the big problems, right? We've got the tracking and we've got the structure. So I've said a bit more about like how we knew that we had structural issues or how I've seen it show up in other agencies or businesses. When it comes to tracking, how can a business know whether they're tracking the right metrics? Besides like going back and critically staring reality in the face and seeing if they ever tied it back to what the client or customer actually wants, what are some of the symptoms that might show up so that people know that they're not tracking the right things, they're not tracking enough?
Yeah, I feel like most people know when they're not tracking enough because I'll have people that I'm talking to, and like the consistent theme is like I feel like I'm flying blind. Like I don't
Mm,
understand what I'm doing, what the inputs that I'm supposed to be doing to get to the outputs that I want. And whether that's from a marketing and lead gen perspective or from an operations perspective, I feel like that's the main symptom is like the owner feels like they're flying blind, or the team who leads other team members, like they feel like they're flying blind. And then there's also usually going to be constant firefighting because you're not doing the right things, you're not tracking the right things for the team to do the right things. So the team is always doing the wrong things.
mm,
So I think those are the biggest symptoms from the metrics is like you or your team feel like they're flying blind and not and they don't have the right guidance on what to do. And then there's a lot of client firefighting because you're focused on the wrong things.
mm. And maybe one thing I would add to that is you feel like expectations between you and your team are misaligned, and you're like, why aren't they doing anything right? Like, I'm the only one that can do anything, but
Oh,
you've never
that's a good
taken the
one.
time to actually say, these are your KPIs. This is your North Star metrics. This is like creating like job function cards, right? Like this is what you're here to do, and then tying those back to, how your business makes money.
Yeah,
Okay, now with the structure, or add anything about the tracking, but with the structure, how do people know if they have structure issues in their teams? What
yeah.
symptoms will be popping up?
Yeah, the biggest one is lead time. So like
Mm,
slow delivery times. Like it takes you 4 to 6 weeks to deliver something to a client on average. Very common. You'll see it in slow delivery times. You also see it in quality issues because the work is being passed between all these different functions and silos, and things tend to erode, and there tends to be errors and lots of revisions between those different silos. You'll notice so like metrics is a lot of client firefighting, but like the structure is a lot of team fighting. Like teams will be goaled with different KPIs that are
mm,
antagonistic and they will fight each other, and you'll feel it on calls. Like team members
mm,
are against each other, but if you have the right structure, everybody should be aligned because they have the same goals.
mm. Okay, so basically, if we think in marketing terms, in this
Yeah.
crappy before state, there's a dream outcome, and ops is going to be the vehicle. So if your business feels like a dumpster fire where no one's doing what you want, you're stuck in the delivery, you feel like you're flying blind, things are taking long, clients are churning, employees are churning, like everything feels hard and frustrating. But you want to get into a really well oiled machine where you know in advance, like, okay, is the business healthy? Do you feel harmony in the team? Are your teams working together? Are your clients happy? Do you actually know what's going on in your business? So we're kind of here, we want to go here. Okay, no pressure, but where can we start? Maybe take us through like the system, like what are the core systems we need, and how can we start to think about this to, it's like a big question, right? But how can we think about this to start implementing it in our business? Over to you, Master of Operations. Solve our problems. How do we start to get started with ops?
You hired me. No, I'm kidding.
That's true. That is what I did. It's always who, not how. Okay, end of podcast. Go and pay
Yeah.
Kyle money.
Um, so I think that like I always try to look at the simplest route that will get you to the action that you want.
Mm,
And I think if if you don't understand the foundations of your business, you're always going to have issues. And what I mean by
mm,
foundations is there's 6 foundations that I talk about
mm,
in my school and my community. And these are the unsexy things that most agency owners or most business owners like they look at it and they're like, I don't want to do this. This looks stupid. And that's things like number one, understanding client value. Number two, understanding what the mission of the company is. Number three, understanding what the vision of the company is, like what you're ultimately trying to achieve. Number four, understanding your ICP, and that's your ideal client profile. And the way we look at ICP is based on data, not based on a feeling. So we want to take a look at what are the um, what are the most profitable companies that we've been working with in the past. Um, how much revenue do we get from them? How much profit do we get from them? Because a company can give you a lot of LTV, but they can also be a huge time waste and take a lot of
mm,
resources from the team. And then we also want to look at like, did we just enjoy working with this team? And then hopefully there's some alignment at the top with the top like 4% or 6% of your clients. And then we want to pivot the entire business around those people because we know that they pay us the most money. We know that they are the most profitable, and we know that they're the best to work with. And I know you're in the middle of some of this right now that you're testing, so I'll have to know that how that's going.
Mm.
And then after ICP, we take a look at our strategy. And our strategy, I typically break into 4 different areas. And that's there's a people related strategy, there's a process related strategy, there's a lead gen related strategy, and there's an operational related strategy. And for each one of those, we want to understand what are the main things that if we do them, we're going to accomplish the vision that we set out to achieve.
Mm.
And then the last part is priorities. And priorities are okay, we know what we want to do. We have an idea of of what we want to accomplish. What are the priorities that we need to focus on as a team in order to get to that ultimate goal? And there's usually 4 or 5 things that you think about like what's the number one thing that if I did that I would reach my process strategy, right? I'd reach my operational strategy, or I'd reach my lead gen
Mm.
strategy. And like that's all you do for anywhere from 3 months to a year. Like you just focus on that thing because you already know it's the number one thing that you can do to reach your goals. So I think like setting those foundations is probably the most important thing. And this should be done in like 2 4 hour sessions or like 8 to 10 hours because it takes a lot of time to go through this as a leadership team and to think about it and to have some back and forth on it because not everybody's going to always agree on it. But like I mean, you went through the experience with me. It's probably one of the most impactful things you've ever done for your company, right?
Yeah, and 100%. And we were doing it somewhat, but what I found with this framework is one, it helps us to make decisions in advance. So what we used to be doing, because we weren't using this exact framework for planning, and we were probably like planning like 3 months ahead, right? Which was fine for the stage of business because so much would change. I think more from the chaos bombs we dropped, but
Yeah.
whatever. So much would change, and then we had to be agile. And one, it gives us a longer term focus on the business. So we set those 3 to 5 year breakthrough objectives, and now it's like, okay, we've got like a longer term focus on the business. That's one of them. It means also like there's less decision fatigue. It's just very easy. Does this, like, was this on our priorities that we set for this quarter? Yes or no? And if no, then are you going to tell Kyle that you're adding it to the priorities and get told
Yeah,
off?
yeah, you
Like
gotta
that's
tell me.
no,
Yeah.
that's it. Matt and I are like, oh, we're gonna have to tell Kyle. I was like, okay, we can't do it. Don't do it. And it gives you more focus, right, and more discipline because I know for us, and I know it's true for most business owners, like, what's the thing that'll kill you? It's like businesses don't die of starvation, they die of indigestion, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not starving for ideas to do, it's the shiny object syndrome. And we've done this, like, we've created products, we've had a coaching program for 6 months. And when we were just like, what happens if you focus on an agency? Well, it gets to 7 figures and then multiple 7 figures very
Real quick.
quickly,
Yeah.
real quick. And it comes from having these frameworks. So we had client value, and that is a very clear sentence of like, what does a client actually value? Maybe I'll read mine out so people can, like, what is this? So for us as an agency, the client value is we're a plug and play performance team to build and optimize a predictable, consistent, and scalable system to attract your dream clients and profitably scale your business. And each word in there has come from hundreds of hours of sales calls and working with clients. So it's like very purposeful. You have your mission, your vision, your ICP, the strategy with people, process, lead gen, and ops, and then the priorities. So that's the 6 foundations. What's next?
Yeah. Um, two points that I want to make in that is
Mm-hmm.
like what you mentioned earlier with like the quarterly planning, like that's what traditional management teaches. It's like these OKRs, but the issue is you become very short-sighted because you're only focused on 3 months of the year. So you can't think of long-term projects
Mm.
that are going to take the whole year, which is really the things that drive your business, right? Like if you're trying to break a new lead gen channel and you only give it 3 months, like there's a huge chance it's going to fail. But if you give it a whole year, you're probably going to be successful at it. So the whole year gives you the additional time to do things that take longer than a quarter because a quarter is really not that long
Mm.
when you're looking at it. And what was your question?
My question was, what's
Yeah,
next? Now we've got our 6 foundations, which I think is
yeah,
like this. So we've got our 6 foundations. You can't build a house on sand. If you don't know these, you'll have poor decision making, you'll have no focus, you'll be short-sighted,
Yeah.
you'll have no discipline, and you will say yes to everything and no to not enough stuff. Then what do we think about after the 6 foundations?
So once you've got that finalized, I think you have a really good foundation for your business. And then you can start to look at processes in the business and how to improve it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that most like ops consultants, quote unquote, get that wrong because the first thing that they do is they go in and like, how do we systemize things and how do we process things? But if you're systemizing bad systems and you're making a process out of bad processes, you get a bad output. So you want to make sure that you have a solid foundation first before you go in and mess with any of that stuff. The second thing that you can now do is really take a look at and understand what excellent process looks like, and then put that into your business. And most people think, or even experienced COOs that I know, they think that because a process is organized and in a project management system, that it's good. But
Mm.
to truly have a great process, you need a few things. Is number one, you need flow, which is you need to be able to do something very quickly and remove barriers to finalize it. And that's like, how do we decrease time to value? You need to understand client demands. And from by that, I mean like, how many deliverables do we need to produce in a given time period? So for instance, if we're, I'll use an email agency because I think it's just a really linear process to think
Mm.
about. It's like if we're an email agency and we need to deliver 100 emails to our clients a month, we then need to deliver 25 to them per week, and we need to deliver 5 per day. But that doesn't usually happen. Usually, delivery is very sporadic, and you'll have these big delivery days where your team is overworked because they're delivering 20 things, and these days where they need more work because there's not enough work. So you want to try to understand delivery, and then standardize the delivery. You want to understand the capacity of your team. So if you have 5 emails per day that you're supposed to be delivering, or if you have 5 leads you're supposed to be talking to somebody on the phone with and qualifying them and then sending them to somebody else, like how much work can they actually do? And the typically when we look at client capacity, when I ask owners what's the capacity of your team to work, like how long does it take for you to work on a client, they'll give me an answer based on feeling,
Mm.
or it's well, we tried to give this person 6 clients and they start to churn a lot of people, so it must be around 6. But like all that tells you is that the current processes that you have are good up to 6 clients. It doesn't actually tell you how many clients this person could service if they had a good process. So you have to understand that. And then the next part of a good process is called leveling.
Mm.
And this is what I call like removing the self-inflicted chaos and processes that you usually create. And the example that I have for this is at Weekend, which was the agency that I'm currently an advisor at, was it COO and partner at, is we'd have all of our client deliverables for client projections due on the 15th of the month every month. So every media buyer had to submit client projections by the 15th. And that was a nightmare that week. Whatever week that was on, it was a nightmare. And it was self inflicted because then I looked at the process. I'm like, well, what if we actually had some that were due on the 3rd, and then some that are due on the
Mm.
5th, and the 7th, and then the 9th, and the 11th, so that we're leveling the workload for the team. So we're removing that self inflicted chaos that we put on the team because we said everything is due on the first date. And then the last part of creating good process is creating what's called WIP priorities and rules. And WIP is just work in progress. It's a task that you started but you haven't completed. And what you want to do is you want to organize how that work should be done by your team, because usually the rules are ambiguous. But you want like the team to understand is the most urgent thing. The thing that we're doing first is that the oldest task, or the task that was submitted first, the task that was submitted last. Like most people kind of guess at this and they expect their team to understand it, but it should be written down somewhere. This is the order that we work on our tasks, and everybody agrees and understands of those things. So those are the real key to having operational excellence and in a business, that like a nice process that's in ClickUp or whatever project management system are typically missing.
Yes. And I would add a process is only good if it gets followed and executed correctly, right?
Yeah.
And like we've definitely, even from building teams, like because I've been doing it like King Kong, founder, and now PX, you sit in your ivory tower and you're like, all right, I'm gonna show these guys how to do a sick, like I'm gonna write it all down and they're gonna follow it perfectly and everyone's gonna do what I want. And then it's like the equivalent is maybe academics that have never actually done the thing, and they're sitting in the library and they're talking about like academically, theoretically, this is what needs to happen in a business. And then once it goes out into the real world, it's not transferable, right? And I think a lot of businesses get overwhelmed or stuck. Like, where should they even start with processes? I like to think of them as minimum viable. So when we do ours, we do them like minimum viable. Whoever's going to like actually own the process creates it. Somebody else with an equivalent role runs through it, finds the holes, and then like we set it. And then we have like process owners and we do swarms quarterly to update processes or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's just something I made up. So what's actually the good way to start getting processes installed into your business and not getting stuck, and then not making the mistake of creating systems and processes that are dumb, that no one will follow, that you just like are creating for no apparent reason?
Yeah. So like how do you put good processes in your business that people want to actually
Yeah.
follow?
Yeah. Like,
Um,
and not get bogged down in perfection of it, right?
yeah. So I'll tell you what I do. Like this is
Mm,
exactly what I do. I have this really crazy thing that I do whenever I take over a team. And that's number one, that I like teach the team what a good process looks like. And that's like a 4 hour training. And then number
mm,
two, I ask them, based on what you now know, what's the best way to improve the process that you're currently doing?
mm,
And this is usually like 20 to 30 minutes a day if I'm working on a new team, and this could last a month or two, just building what I call a playbook. And these
mm,
are team-led processes that I coach the team to create. They're the ones who are coming up with all the ideas, and then I'm just coaching on them to make them a little better. And what happens when you build these playbooks that are team-led as opposed to traditional processes that are manager directed? We have a manager who's going and they're writing all these things down, and they're writing everything in their mind down, and like it's going to be
mm,
impossible for the team to follow. Is when the team is a part of process creation, the team feels ownership in that process, so they're more likely to do it, and more importantly, they're more likely to make the process better because they have ownership. They made the initial version. So I'm a huge advocate for team-led processes where we're working with the team on a daily basis to improve those versus having a manager that creates processes in a vacuum and then sort of expects the team to learn this new thing that they've never done before and follow it perfectly to the T. Um, so that's the first part, and then the
mm,
once you've documented it, I know this wasn't part of the question, but it's really important. Once you've documented a process, it's really important to operationalize it. So you
mm,
can have this SOP or this playbook that's in this beautiful document and teach it to people, but people aren't going to be looking at that all day. So you need to make it a part of their normal workflow, whatever processes you created, and you do that by putting in their project management system as checklists. So ensure you do this, ensure you do this. And you can't close out the task without the checklist. As templates in the project management system. So like we already know this is the best way to do a creative. So here's a framework for how to make a creative, and you put it in so that they're forced to use it while they work. And it makes it
mm.
easy for them because they don't have to go searching for it in 50 other places. Um, so
That's
use
a
the team
mistake
led, yeah, yeah.
that I was gonna say that's a mistake or not, like I think it was just part of the growing journey. But we had our playbooks, but then it was like, well, like my team would be like, oh, how do we do this? And I'm like, it's in the fucking playbook. Like, and it's like, well, no, actually, the playbook is like, it's like we wrote this like beautiful manuscript and then it went onto a shelf, like a digital shelf, and started
Yeah,
collecting dust. And it's like
but it's
instead, it's
beautiful.
like it was so nice. As you said, you got to operationalize it. So it's
Yeah,
like, okay, into our ClickUp, the playbook is like accessible, like it's pinned in the bar, and then each component is then broken down into the clear tasks, and it just helps to give like a bit more that accountability and ownership, but also stops people from switching things. Like our playbooks are made in like the Google Docs, and every time they have to switch programs or platforms, right, they're losing efficiency. So it's like, how do you just like find these little wins for efficiency in all of this?
yeah, and they'll tell you. And like the key phrase that I've used, because if you're like, hey, what are your issues? What are your problems? People feel like they don't want to report that to their manager. But if you're
Mm,
like, hey, what annoys you? Like that specific terminology, what annoys you about your job? not like HR, but like the job that you do every day, what annoys you, and they will tell you 1,000 things that annoy them, and all those are
Mm.
chances for process improvement that can make the process better.
Yeah, and having a culture where feedback is welcomed, but like teaching them to not, it's
100%.
not complaining, but it's like that idea of the Kaizen, right? So even we've brought in an ops assistant PM, and I'm gonna get her coach to be that ideas coach. So she'll work with everybody and like be like it'll be everybody's KPIs. Like, what are your ideas? Like, we have this post-mortem board. It's not some suggestion box that she doesn't look at. It's, and I used to manage the post-mortem board, not very well,
Hmm.
but people would put their ideas in. And so, somebody in the team had this great idea. He's like, we have, this is like when we're like still getting up and running. He's like, we don't have one spot for all our client information, and I'm going to 10 different places. And I was like, yeah, dumb.
Yeah,
I'll fix that. Like,
yeah.
client one pager executed in that fortnight or in that month of like our process optimizations, right? So I think like my takeaway here is it's not one and done. Like, just like how the business is an organism, I think that the systems are ever evolving organisms, and they have to change. Like, the skill set will change, or the external environment will change, or the competition changes, or the needs of your market change, and you have to keep improving them as well.
100%. And like if your processes are manager created, they're probably looked at once a year, and you are losing to your competition because they're
Mm.
updating it on a daily basis and making things better.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, are there any questions that I haven't asked you yet, or anything you want to add when it comes to, we've got the foundations and then we've got how to install some more of these? Is there any more steps of this system that we need to know?
There's a million more steps, but I'd say like those are really good places to start. Like if you can
Mm,
get the 6 foundations in your business, and then you can create good processes that are team led, and then use the operational excellence frameworks that I talked about earlier, which is like understanding client demand, understanding capacity, leveling the workload of your team, putting in priorities. That's like how you really turn it to the next level.
mm. And if for everybody listening, if they could go and execute one thing today, like if they've resonated with this and they're like, whoopsies, ops is not good at my company, where should they start? Like, what should be the first thing?
Um, like honestly, like this is just what I do. Like I literally go talk to the people who are doing
Mm,
delivery, and I use the same process that I told you about. Like I teach them this is what a good process looks like, and then I ask them how can we make this better. Like that's where you should start if you've done the 6 foundations and you understand process. Is now you go to the team and you actually do that thing. You
mm,
install a good process, you work with them, and then you make sure that they have the ability to make new process changes.
mm. One of my last questions is, I think that you have, I don't know if it's like a contrarian, but a different way about thinking about ops, where
It's
a lot of what
contrarian.
I find, yeah, okay, it's contrarian. You're
Yeah,
edgy. You're very edgy in the ops space,
yeah.
but like what you say, right? And this is like in the scaling up books as well. Like, it's like these outdated ways of thinking about business and people of resources. Like, you think very differently. So I'm interested to know, what are the top books, the top people, the top resources? Like, what fueled you to become a master of operations if somebody else wants to try and get to your level?
Really good question. So I have self-educated a lot, a lot, a lot. And a lot of my influences are heavily from what's called lean thinking. And lean is a way of thinking and changing people in your company and thinking about client value. Like all these things that I talk about, they started in lean. So the books that I highly recommend, the number one book that you should read if you're interested in that is called The Lean Turnaround by Art Byrne. It will, if you understand it, it will change your entire philosophy of business and realize that you have everything backwards. He has a follow-up workbook called the Lean Turnaround Workbook that I also highly recommend. And really anything that you can get your hands on that's lean focused for service and business, for service or delivery, like that is how you should run a business. And the way that I think about it is like the EOS is really popular. And I think
Mm,
EOS is really good training wheels for people to understand structure and like how that can happen in your business. The big issue that I have with EOS is that EOS is very top down, where management controls everything. Whereas in reality, the best businesses are bottom up, where the teams who do the work are helping to create processes. They're coming up with ideas. they're doing the thing that you want them to do, and then the most valuable people in the company, and the rest of the team is just there to support them. So it's a whole different type of philosophy from like a traditional command and control management where like the people at the top are doing all the hard work. It's like, no, the people who are talking to your clients and doing the work, they're doing all the hard work. It's your job to support them.
Mm,
So anything you can get your hands on lean, I highly recommend. If you've never like done anything for ops, like you can start with traction, Gino with command and scaling up
mhm.
for Harnish. But I think that you should also take a look at lean books as well.
Awesome. Kyle, interrogation over. I've cancelled the waterboarder. You have successfully completed your
That's
episode
it.
today. That's the hour. I don't want to keep you forever. I really appreciate your time, not just today, but as I've hopefully successfully relayed to you, helping Matt and I with our business. I think I've said to you one of our biggest epiphanies is, okay, business is not just sales and marketing. Like to do business properly, there's a lot more to it, and you have to think at a much bigger level. And I think you were saying like when we started with you, when we saw you in Nashville, you were like, oh, like when we started with you 6 months ago, you were at 70K, now you're at 150. It was actually 3 months. And then I think that will double again. We were like, no, wrong. That was actually
three,
three
three
months.
months.
And
Yeah.
like that is on track. That'll double again in the next X amount of time. And it is from installing these systems. Like it's like we're already good at sales and marketing. That comes, we're good at getting attention, we're good at whatever, right? Like authority building. But we were like, it was just like we just didn't know what to freaking do in the back end to actually support that business, and having these things in place, like these 6 foundations, and knowing to install these. And even still, like I'm sure we're still doing it on a very baby level, right? Like, but that's the thing, it's a journey, and as long as you're dedicated and disciplined to learning, like you'll keep getting it. So I wanted to say thank you. And if anybody else would like to find you, ask you questions, or to join anything that you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just find Kyle Hunt, or you can go to agencyoperators.io to look at the school community slash mastermind that I've created. And the reason you're my favorite clients is because you guys are like the best marketers that I've ever met, and you understand that you need ops help, and you do what I advise you to do, and you're very fast at it. So thank you
Yes.
for having me on and for working with me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Okay. See you next time.